Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us to our second series of Tough Conversations and Dinner. For those of you who are live streaming us, we have really good food. You should have been here. But tonight we're really excited for the second in our series. Rebecca Smither works for the University of Miami Center for Comprehensive Brain Health. I met her a number of months ago and got a tour of the facility. She clearly thought that in my declining health and age, I needed a lot of help. So she put me through all of the experiences there. But I thought this was an important subject for all of us as we're aging. And we look at ways to maintain our health and to continue to be vibrant and productive as we move into our sunset years, if you will. So without any further delay, Rebecca.
Thank you, Joel, for that warm welcome, and thank you, everybody, for coming out. And I hope at the end of the talk that you have a better understanding of your brain health, and specifically how it starts many, many years before we're in our, as Joel said, kind of our golden years. Okay, so we are the Comprehensive Center for Brain Health, and we're in Boca Raton. Let's say that again. We're in Boca Raton. Because often I'll talk to people, and if I just say it kind of casually, you think UM, you think Miami. But like many, universities and medical clinics, they broaden their reach. So we're here to serve Palm Beach and Broward counties. And we are under UM, under the Miller School of Medicine, in the neurology department. And then we're Comprehensive Center for Brain. So it's quite a few levels. But so this is just, there's a couple of images here, pictures tell you many things, right? So this is just some of the activities that we do. And our mission is very important. Our mission is to understand better how the aging brain works and design treatments and prevention plans. That's key to what we do, prevention. That will result in longer, better lives, right? For the people and their families. Okay, so again, real quickly, what we do at CCBH, okay, primarily we're a research facility. And by that, primarily, most of it is prevention. So that means healthy people out and about in our studies. Clinical care, we do have a clinic. Again, it's neurology. We have nurse practitioners. We have Dr. James Galvin. He is the principal investigator in all our research, as well as our clinician. And we have a licensed clinical social worker. So there's a lot of people there that are taking care of people in clinical care services. And then outreach and education are in green because that's what I do. And this is about coming to the community. Most people have not heard of us. We opened our doors about 2 months ago. But people, don't know who we are, don't know what we do. So, we're trying to get the word out. So by all of you coming today, you're learning about it. And education, we do talks in the community, right? I am doing a talk here, but it's more like a meet and greet. It's not a formal, education event. But if you have a group of people, right, it could be, where you live, where you work, where you socialize, and you want to educate everybody about healthy brain aging, let me know, and we can, set that up. And outreach also we do is, we've done, book clubs. We just now started an origami class. So we're also, as outreach, in my position, we want to provide experiences and things that we're telling everybody they should be doing, right? New experiences, new learning, it's critical. So we are starting to implement those programs as well. And then training, this is our second year, we will start training for university students. And also we're looking into possibly having high school students as volunteers in some capacity. So more to come on that soon. Okay, so here's a couple fun facts. I call them fun facts, hopefully you'll think so too. So the average brain weighs 3 pounds. Okay, so if you weigh 200 pounds, just 3 pounds is doing all that work. And as an infant, when we're born, your brain is 1 pound. Okay, so but my question to you is, how many calories in a day does the average adult brain burn? We all are kind of concerned about, burning calories. We gotta take the stairs, drive farther away. Who wants to guess how many calories? I'll give you a hint if you need it. 0? Do you have a guess?
300.
You're warm. Any other guesses?
500.
Wow, no. I like that number, but no.
250.
Oh! 260 calories. So that's about, 3 cookies, right? Or if you want to break it down, it's 18 calories per minute.
Why? How does it do that?
Well, it's just the neurons that are well, the next slide will kind of tell you a little bit more about that. But it's energy burn, right? The neurons are all that signaling without us even thinking about it. Okay, so here we go. This is where the calories burn. We have 100 billion neurons. Okay, those are your nerve cells, and there's many different types. Transmitting information using electrical impulses and chemical impulses, axons is a key word, in our brain and nervous system. So all that is happening, and it's happening very quickly. I mean, there's a range, right? Depending on what neuron is traveling, there is a range. But who would like to guess how fast they're going through our body? Think of like, okay, you're on I-95, you're going 70 miles an hour. That's a start. No brave takers? Okay. 100. 100, oh, I like that. Okay, 100. We're keeping it 100. Okay. From 100 to 270, depending on the type of neuron. Okay, so it's about 50 to 120 meters per second. Okay, because your neurons, there's basically 3 big groups of them, but there are hundreds of them. And a neurologist would be the appropriate person to break that down for you. But all that's happening, right? Just don't even think about it. Okay, so now let's get on to learn a little bit more about what's going on. Okay, so we think brain health, healthy brain aging, etc. And you heard the word cognition or cognitive skills. Okay, it's all similar. But basically what it is mental processes by which people become aware and understand the world, right? So we think, okay, well, how do we understand and experience the world? Is through our 5 senses, right? That's everything. I'm listening, I'm seeing, I'm walking, I'm touching. Also, with every sensory impulse, right, those neurons are going. So these are just some of the common cognitive skills that we can identify with, right? Reading, right? Now I will point out, reading and learning, okay, are different. And what I'm going to say about that is reading. Say I read, the same book all the time, or I read the same thing all the time, right? I have to think about it, but it's not the same thing as learning, right? Maybe I'm going to read a book that's really, really challenging, right? So I kind of have to learn the tempo of this book. I have to learn the vocabulary. It's different. So all of these, there is a different experience and a different workload in our brain. So we have perception, we have judgment, we have speech, okay, which is especially critical, as child development. Learning, I talked about, analyzing, right, figuring things out, awareness, and recall and memory. That's a big. Right? Okay, so any questions about these skills? These are the kind of the everyday ones that we do. Okay, now this slide, there's a lot going on, so I'm going to break this up. But what I want to really emphasize here is that last word up there, lifespan. So from infancy to your 105, right? That's your lifespan. And not only our brain, but right, all our organs are going through an experience, right? And we have the ability to do our best to support a wonderful, healthy, productive lifespan. Okay, but today we're here to talk about brain health. So I'm going to break all this in, but just to let you know, what I'm going to be talking about, right? The green is early life. So the moment you're born, believe it or not, goes all the way up to 45, which is a big, it's a big chunk. But that's called early life. Okay, and then the next we get into midlife, the blue, and that's 45 to 65. And then the last kind of curving around is later life. So that's 60, 66 to 105, or 125, right? However that is for everybody. But we can see already, right, the different components that are twisting around. And all these numbers I'm going to break down, it's going to add to 100. So 100%, okay, of all this entailed in my lifespan. Okay? Any questions about this? Okay, we're going to dive into this. Okay, and the other key word to mention here is risk factors. Okay, we're going to talk about that too. Okay, so here's the first one. The first group I talked about was in green, right? On that slide, there it is. Okay, so lifespan, childhood to 45 years old. Okay, so here we have a little girl here, right? The two columns here, the one on the left, right? Non-modifiable risk factors. Okay, so this is 60%. Remember I talked about that number? That we cannot change. Okay, so we are born, this is already set up. Okay, and this includes our age, right? Because my clock starts ticking right as soon as I'm born. Sex, right? When you're born, there is, a sex identified. Family history, right? So when I'm born, whatever went on before I came, I can't control that, right? This person may have this illness, this person had this person never took a day in their life. And then the genes, right? That's what I come to the world with. So that is 60% of that 100% that we can't change. Okay, so it's not, doesn't sound too good, right? It's a little bit discerning too. And also just to emphasis too on genes, they're in our makeup, but it doesn't mean it's going to happen to us, right? It's in there, right? So it's something it could or could not. Okay, so here we have education is 7%. And the little girl there is very symbolic because this is where it gets down to families, right? Childhood, it's all about education, right? That's really what we're really fueling our children with. So it's key that the more education you can have, it starts in elementary, the quality of education, right? The longevity of education. Ideally people are getting all the way through high school. It doesn't happen with everybody. But those that don't make it through the 12th grade, okay, that 7% that they can have really strong, it may not be. So already as children, you have to think about your brain health with them because that number could go down depending on the experience of the child. Okay, so here we are midlife, 45 to 65. Okay, and here we have the blue, right? So it's not a very good image, so here I crossed it over. Okay, so modifiable risk factors. Notice I took away that 60%, right? There's no sense of, even talking about it. It is what it is. 40% is the focus now. So, between these 20 years, okay, these 5 things, okay, now these can still be happening in our younger years, right? But it's more prevalent in this middle age, right? That whatever's been happening for 20 or 30 years, this is when it's going to really start impacting that percentage of that 40%. We want 40%. We want to be greedy. We want as much of that as we can get. So these are some of the things. Hearing loss is 8%, which is significant. Okay, so if you're having any trouble, I'll get into prevention, but if you're having any trouble with hearing, right, get it checked out. Always get it checked out. Okay, next is hypertension, right? So if you have high blood pressure, that's 2%. Excessive alcohol, right? If most people know by this age if they have too much alcohol consumption in their daily life, people usually know it, and that's going to impact you. Okay, obesity, again, that's something also. And then traumatic brain injury is 3%. Okay, so at this age, okay, this is when it's really making a bigger impact even than when we were younger. Okay, so I'm just gonna ask, are any of you surprised by these numbers out of 40? Is anyone surprised by these numbers? Oh, yes.
I'm afraid I don't grasp these percentages you have next to these factors. I mean, 8% compared to what? 2%, 1%?
Okay,
What?
great question. Okay, so think of the number 40, okay, as opposed to 40%. I'll put it this way, I have 40 points that I can work toward to get a score of 40. I mean, it's not going to happen that way in real life, but that's what I'm thinking, right? If I can get that score of 40, as I age, I'm going to be better at aging with my brain health. If any of these are dinged or less, I'm going to be, coming in at 32 or 33. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right.
So if I'm shooting for the 40 and I have hearing loss, that represents 8% of the total, which drops me to 32.
Well, you may have 4%. There's not an exact formula for that. This is what research has determined the impact. So
So the window of hearing loss would be between 0 and 8%
exactly.
of the 40.
Yes.
Gotcha. I didn't quite understand that.
Yep. Great questions. Yes.
Untreated hearing loss, though. Untreated.
Well, it's untreated and even treated. It's both. But yes, untreated, you're probably at that max.
At the 8, right?
Yeah. Because a lot of people, especially at this age, it's like, oh, I'm tired of, taking care of, my weight or, my diabetes or whatever it is, right? People just kind of they slack off for whatever reason. Maybe they have to. It could be, a financial thing, whatever the reason is. So then it slips into that untreated or kind of sloppy treated. So again, you're kind of opening that door of not being at your best. Yeah.
I'm a little surprised about traumatic brain injury being only 3%.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, these numbers, it did surprise me. Hearing, I was very surprised to learn that as well. Yeah.
I'm very surprised that all of these are as low as they are. Obesity and alcohol and like that. You think they would be considerably more than 1%?
The biggest, hearing loss has been the biggest one, and the one before that was education.
It was 7.
It was 7. And that's the one that starts really, really young. And so the more education, the higher up on that 7 you're going to be.
Could I ask a question about the education? Because there are, forgive me, I mean, I know it's not necessarily the case in this exact day and age, but many people of the 20th century who were rather accomplished, a lot of them did not graduate high school, and yet they went on to have very substantial careers and, and attained leadership positions. So,
But that didn't mean they were healthy.
no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying can education also be self-education because they weren't interested in some of the academic things. They wanted to pursue, whatever parts of their career themselves, and that helped them,
Yes, it doesn't necessarily have to be formal education.
not formal.
Right, so that's a good point too, because maybe some people, right, they're done with school, right, at high school, and they go on, and it's more career training, and they just become their work, and they're so skilled and advanced and everything. Yes, because it's continued learning. Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay, so now we're at the third, right? The later life, 65 to 105 plus. Okay, and so here we have the purple, like that last final curve. So all those numbers we added up again, we would come to 40. So on this, smoking is 5%. Okay, depression is 4%. Social isolation is 4%. A lot of people discount that one. Oh, I'm fine. I like to be by myself. It's not ideal, right? We're humans should interact, because if I'm home doing my own thing, I might be having a great time, but if I come to a group, I'm going to be stimulated differently, right? It's different. The different things that I'm experiencing. Physical inactivity, right? And that physical inactivity, right? That looks different for everybody, right? Because someone who has been, an athlete, their physical inactivity may be different than someone who's, never really been that active, right? But no matter where you are on that spectrum of, your fitness, it's going to have an impact. Air pollution. This is really important too, and one side over there. And on the next slide, I'm going to get into about that, about green space. And then diabetes, 1%. So we went through those three things, right? The early, the mid, and the later, and all those, again, I want to emphasize, are 40. So we have 40 points we're going toward. Okay, so this is environment. And I bring this up too because this is really important to be aware of, and also this is something too that policyholders need to be aware of, people that are really in charge of infrastructure of communities. Because, okay, we have the self, right? So I can be doing, or trying to be doing everything right? I want to eat healthier, I want to take my walk, I want to read different genres of books, I want to even maybe go somewhere and join a class, go out and take a computer class or something, right? That's what I want to do, because I know I should. And then you have family, right? So what are your family supports, right? Or what kind of structure is it? Is it a healthy family, meaning that no ideal setup, but everyone is supporting each other, right? There's love at the home, right? There's acceptance and those kind of things. That will impact. All those 40 points you're trying to do, especially as a younger, right, from baby to 45, that has an impact. Are they interfering with you getting to that, right? And then we have community, which is huge, right? And this is a perfect example of a community, right? It's a social gathering or a gathering with some purpose, right? And do you have a community that you feel good, you can go to, you learn from, you laugh, and not every city has, communities to do that. Or it's very limited. Maybe there's only one community group and you go to it and you don't like it, right? You're like, I want to do more, but there's nothing here for me. So again, that can influence those 40 points we're trying to get. Okay, and then the last one is systems. And that's just kind of a broad term. By what I mean by that is just things in place that we can't change, right? So maybe it could be political. It could be our work environment, right? It's a big conglomerate and they work me really hard and this and that and they're interfering and a lot of mental stress or something like that. So that's something that's also is a bigger picture. It's something that we can't control, but it's impacting us, right? Like, for example, I'll go back to water, right? In your community, but the community leaders can only do so much because they need help with other resources. So that would be something that would be into a system that's kind of, impeding what you want to do. Okay, so next we'll talk about cognition changes. Okay, so these are things to be considered, even if you are super healthy. If you go to the doctor, your primary care physician, everything is like check, check, check. You're like, oh, I'm great, I'm good, I'll see you next year. Great. However, it doesn't mean that something can't be changing in your cognitive skills we talked about earlier, right? So these are some of the ones, okay? And the key thing about these are these words, increase and decrease, okay? So increased challenges with multitasking. Now it's something that you've been doing, all the time, all of a sudden you can't do anymore, right? Not something totally crazy you're multitasking. That's just, common sense opinion. But something you've done and now it's a little bit different. And then a little bit later, it's a little bit different again. You're seeing a change. Increased difficulty finding words. And again, it's increasing. We all do that, usually it's not worrisome because it comes back to us. Decrease in the ability to pay attention, right? Again, you're seeing it in something that you really like to do or someone you always hang out with and you're losing your focus, right? And then forgetting things. Right? It's happening over and over again, or you're finding the things in very unusual places, right? And then over on the right, okay, just to emphasize, this is not healthy brain aging. It's not like we shouldn't be telling ourselves, oh, well, I'm getting old, it happens. Not really, not really. Memory loss is not a normal part of the aging process. And so the tip is you're going to start recording anything, just in a little journal, right? Start writing it down, the date, the time, and what it was. And you can just, just keep it to yourself, right? Just keep it until there's maybe some patterns or some significant repetitions. Then, you're going to want to have a conversation with your primary care physician. Okay, so these are diagnosis, okay? And the first thing I want to say about this slide is, if you are seeking cognition care, diagnosis, treatment, you need to see a licensed clinical professional. You see online the little quizzes, that's fine, but don't self-diagnose yourself, okay? You can get into trouble doing that. It's really, if there is something, you've got those notes in your journal, talk to someone, a professional. So these are terms that you should know, okay? The first one is subjective cognitive decline, SCD, and this is something that's self-reported, right? You're just noticing yourself. Maybe no one has noticed. Maybe you don't want anybody to notice, but you're seeing it. So be an advocate for yourself and make notes, okay? Because the only person you're kind of, defeating is yourself. Yes.
Actually, on the slide before, I was curious that it said memory loss is in
Right, like permanent, little things like I don't remember little details of a story, that can just be part of, just aging. But total not remembering something, like if you and I went to a fair 6 years ago, we've talked about it a couple times, and then you bring it up again, and I'm like, it's not there. I have forgotten that. It's like, in other words, it's an experience that you've had that you don't remember. And often you see it more in recent memories than longer ones. Yeah. And so when you're writing those notes, right, it's something that's been happening over the past 12 months. Right? You're seeing these patterns that I mentioned. And a healthcare professional would tell you have that. Okay? And again, you don't want to keep the information from your healthcare provider because, again, if you're only in and out in there like 6.2 minutes, they're probably not going to notice because it's subjective. So you should disclose it. You should, and even make a separate appointment just to talk about it. Second one is mild cognitive impairment, MCI. Again, this is diagnosed, and this is having more memory or thinking problems than other adults in your age range. Right? But you're able to live independently. You're still maybe working, doing your activities, you're doing everything as you normally do. And by the age range, what I mean is, let's say I'm 35, right? And I just noticed a couple little things, right? But it's the same that would be expected in that age. And it's not going to be that much, even when I'm in my 70s or 80s. Because like I said, it's not normal, but like little things, If it's different than that, you're seeing it, your friends are seeing it, people are mentioning it to you. Again, you want to make an appointment and get checked out to see if you have MCI.
Rebecca, I was going to ask that. Do people who are in that second category, are they generally aware of it, or is it brought to their attention?
They're usually aware of it. People are in denial. People hide this. And this is kind of where those tough conversations come. Maybe a spouse, a close friend. So this is a lot of the personality of that person. And some people, just because of the relationship they had, they're already on guard for it. Not that they're looking for it, but they're like, and they want to get it addressed. But yeah, you will know things are happening, and what you decide to do will be your decision, right? Mm-hmm. Subjective cognitive, that's when you're kind of like, I don't really know, maybe, and it may be nothing, right? And I'm gonna skip down to the third because look, not caused by another disease. Because all of these, right, it could be something else. We're not gonna self-diagnose ourselves. Or my best friend told me this, and my cousin had this. Okay, that's good knowledge, but it's not you. And then the third one here, dementia. And I want to emphasize this, that's just an umbrella term. Okay, there's many types of dementia. And the ones down here on the slide, these are the five the most you hear about, right? The most commonly diagnosed. But what it gets down to, right, is cognition difficulty has progressed and interferes, disrupts daily living activities and independence. Right? That's the one word that I think everyone really holds so much value. Independence, right? It's really because you're living your life as you like. And usually impacts multiple thinking domains. So when I went back to those cognitive skills, it's usually multiple things, right? By the time, the disease has progressed. And then these are some of the ones, right? Alzheimer's disease, vascular dementia, Lewy body dementia, frontal total lobar dementia, dementia associated with Parkinson's. And Lewy body dementia, a lot of people had never heard of that. Robin Williams passed away, so that kind of gave more awareness to it. And then most recently, Bruce Willis, was diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia. They all are different. And again, a licensed clinical professional is going to know how to assess you. And a lot of times, first it might just be, dementia, and it takes a little bit longer to really fine tune on a proper diagnosis.
With Bruce Willis, originally they thought it was aphasia, and so he stopped acting, and then as he went to see more specialists, they zeroed in on that diagnosis.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
On the first four, not the Parkinson's, do they progress they attack different areas, but do they progress in kind of the same fashion, or?
It's different for everybody. Some people can be diagnosed and it's very, very slow in progression. And other people it's not. Yeah, there's no real strong pattern for it, but there probably are some neurologists who could probably dive deep into that. But sometimes some are more movement, some are more memory, but then they kind of, as it progresses, you'll see a little bit more of them kind of coming together. Some of them are very specific for what the first symptoms are going to be. But again, it's just being informed, being educated, and seeking an assessment. Okay, so prevention. Okay, this is really big because prevention is what? How many points do we have for prevention? How many points? 40. Right. So we have power, right? And again, it doesn't mean you do everything right. I don't know if I have 40 points. I have no idea. But I'm working. I'm working for 40 points. Okay. So prevention. Discuss all your cognitive changes with your primary care provider. Okay. And then the other thing here is ask for a memory or cognition assessment from your primary care physician. Okay, and a lot of people, they're not really sure what that is. So before I explain it, okay, when you go to the doctor, right, they do blood work, right? They make you get on the scale. They do your blood pressure, right? So well, you probably learned your baseline years ago, right? And they check it, and they know. And even if you do everything, I'm fine, I have a scale at home, I have my own cup, blah, 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 you still go, right? Because it's a formal record of it. You know, they know, okay? So with a memory or cognition assessment, okay, it is a series of medical and cognitive evaluations, okay, and sometimes they're really, really quick. It could just be a few questions, right? and other times, it just depends on who you go to. Your primary care provider may have something. If you go to a neurologist, it may look differently. If you're starting to have, concerns about that's subjective, it may be even a more, thorough exam. But depending on what it is, right? It could be blood work, brain imaging, an MRI or a PET, neuropsychological evaluation, and history taking to rule out other causes. Very important. Okay, so my big hint, okay, if you're 50 or older or you know somebody, you should be asking your primary care physician. Right? And they might say, oh, you're great, and you come in here for 3.5 minutes and you're great. Well, I would ask, but it's up to you. But just know that you can ask, right? Because most doctors, they do have something, right? A little questionnaire, you can do it. And even if you think there's nothing, then you leave feeling great, right?
Becky, you may have said this, it's not hereditary, right?
No, that word is never used. Yep, because you may have a gene, but it doesn't mean you're going to get it. Yeah. It's like, all the genes that we have, it doesn't put you higher. And even if it's not in your family, it doesn't mean you're not, susceptible to getting it. Yep.
Thank you.
And then the third element is some people want to be in a research study, right? So for something like this, if you're feeling good and you don't have any issues, it would be prevention study. Because it's going to be observation. There's no treatment. They're not going to give you something, take this or do this exercise. It's just however you are. And then what they do is they follow you for 5 years. So every time you go, you get information of where you are. Okay, not only your memory, but it's about reasoning, it's logic. They're very, very intense. They're hours long. And they also do physical assessments, right? So for example, I'll just give you an example. If you're on the Zeno mat, right, it's about 25 feet long. And you just walk on it like your normal thing, and it's hooked up. So the research, whoever was doing the coordinating the study, the physical therapist, whoever was doing it, they read the numbers and they can tell you your risk assessment for falls, right? So it's things like that. It's not just, read back 5 words that I told you 5 minutes. It's anyone that's doing an in-depth evaluation, you're going to get a lot out of it. Okay, so baseline. Any questions about talking to your healthcare provider about learning more about your baseline? Do you think it's a good idea? Yes, we do, right? Good. Okay, so now prevention. All right, so the one I really want to talk about, well, there's a few of them, but this is the green space I want to talk about. Earlier we were talking about air pollution, right, on one of those slides. And green space, there has been a lot of research done. And we actually have a research associate, that's all her study, that's all she does. But there's many people, and it's quite fascinating, that shows people that have green space, people that have walkways, that are out in safe environments, like getting back to community, right? If I don't feel safe, I'm not going to go out and walk, right? Or I don't have a sidewalk. All those things, they're all tied into green space, and so it's so important. Even if you don't want to walk because it's hot, just taking your lunch outside, sitting underneath a tree. Believe it or not, that has an impact because all the research for many years. It pulls information about green space, your exposure to parks, even about shade. Like, was it shady or was it not? Did you grow up in the country? Did you grow up in the city? All that is pulled into research, and if there is strong science that argues that green space has a huge important factor on lowering your risk for dementia. Okay, social interaction. Okay, so we're all doing, we already have a few points tonight, okay? Social interaction, check. New knowledge, I hope, right? We leave here, check. Memory skills, we're not really doing a task about memory, so I'm not gonna say that. Maybe you've exercised today, right? Gotten some steps. Creativity, I love that picture of the sandcastle because I have not made a sandcastle since I was probably 7 years old. But again, it's creative play, right? Creative doesn't have to be formal art class. It can be just creative play on whatever you're doing. Okay, again, but it's stimulating our neurons in a different way. Green space I talked about. New skill. That could be anything. It could be changing a tab, right? Knitting, learning a new app on your phone, right? But I like this picture too because the skill that's for dexterity is really good too, right? So that's a nice one too. Mindfulness, and there has been a lot of study on this too because green space and mindfulness, a lot of people aren't aware that there's been heavy research on that, and there is a strong correlation with that and lessening our vulnerability to dementia. So mindfulness, it doesn't have to be formal meditation class. It's basically, if you kind of go online and look at the the leading people on mindfulness, it's really just letting go, quieting your mind, and stop beating yourself up, right? It's just kind of that, just letting it all go, just being accepting and being kind to yourself, really, right? So that's a really good one too. And then volunteer, right? If you have time and you find something you like, right? That is, again, by volunteering, you're doing a lot of these things. You're probably learning something from new people, right? It's social engagement. There's a lot that goes on, and you're giving back to society, right? And that feels really, really good. And then nutrition and diet. There's 101 diets out there, but specifically for brain health, I will tell you the one that again has been studied is it's a combination of the Mediterranean diet, which is real popular, and it pulls in things from the DASH diet, which is it's a DASH diet. Specifically, some doctors prescribe it for treating hypertension. So it pulls those together, and it's called the MIND diet, M-I-N-D. So it's Mediterranean and DASH. And it's basically, what you would expect, good things and this and that. But it does let you have like a little bit of sugar. It's a very lifestyle-friendly nutrition kind of plan. So I suggest you look at that. But that one has been directly correlated with lessening risk of dementia. And even people that didn't do it perfectly, I get the people that were like 90% doing it, and then the people that were kind of like 50%, even them had good results. Any question about these things? Here's 40% right here. Any questions? Yes.
I didn't hear what you said that. You said that that turned out was associated with lessening of something,
Oh, the DASH diet.
which is
It's a diet that a lot of physicians recommend for lowering hypertension. Yeah, for blood pressure control. Yeah. So that's a good one too. DASH, Mediterranean, or MIND diet. Those are all really good. Or the science-based diets. Okay. Okay, so this is just this is us. This is CCBH. It's a lot easier to say than Conference Center of Abraham. But again, we're in Boca, and this the gentleman in the center with glasses, that is Dr. James Galvin. He is the founding director and the principal investigator in all our studies, and many other titles he has as well at the University of Miami. And he is there's only 3 research centers in Florida that are Lewy Body Dementia Centers of Excellence. And it's with his center, because the neurology department here is huge. But we have Dr. Galvin. So we have in University of Florida, and then Mayo Clinic Jacksonville. And the reason I bring that up specifically as one of his many titles is because I gave to you on the table a flyer. Like I said, we opened our doors last January-ish, and we had a conference in October. It was in Delray Beach. It was very well attended. It's free. We do breakfast and lunch. We just want to get everybody in the community to wake up to being aware of brain health, right? Everybody. And then this year, we're doing it in April, and it is going to cover dementia as that umbrella, but it's going to get really more into Lewy body dementia. And he'll be speaking, and he's a fantastic speaker. I'm not even biased when I say he really is, and he's the type afterwards, he really loves questions and answers. He really does. So there's going to be speakers from all three of those centers, and in the morning, everyone's going to be together, and then in the afternoon, there'll be kind of a professional track and then a community track. So there will be resources there for people that want to just learn more. Maybe a loved one has dementia or things like that. So I just encourage you to spread that to anyone you think would be interested in learning more about it. And like I said, we do have a small clinic. We're mostly a research center. And if you have a group you want me or someone from our center to come out and do, just kind of dive deep about neurology and brain health, we can, or you can keep it light. It's really whatever you need, but it's just really important that everyone understands that it's through the lifespan. It's really, really important. It's not just retired people, it's all of us, So that really concludes my talk. So if you have any questions or comments, I'm more than happy to address them. Yes.
So we see people through the pantry and so forth, and we might be concerned about some of them. And I know you're a research, not a treatment facility, but how does someone act if I had 5 people that needed to be evaluated? What do you do? How do we make that happen?
Right. Well, I don't have. Well, through us, it's we only have like UN providers. However, there are clinics that it's a primary care physician. So that really with anyone that would be the first step, because then they're going to possibly give one of those diagnoses, or they'll rule it as something else, and then the next step would be to see a neurologist for an evaluation. Yeah, and there are depending on where they live, there are some clinics that they do the evaluation. I mean, they know people are coming in to get that explored. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then from that, if they need treatment, that's a discussion with the doctor, and but there are medications that help. Yeah.
So do you advocate things like the senior centers doing bingo or crossword puzzles? Or
Yes. Senior centers are wonderful. And the other thing I want to say about that is it's even better when they mix it up, right? Because I can be doing the same thing and that's good, but if I make it more challenging or I do it in a different way, that's even better. But yeah, there are, like I know the Deerfield Beach Senior Center, I have a relationship with them, and they're doing good things. And I foresee when they get their renovation going, I foresee and I hope that they have even more expanded programming. Yeah.
It should be, they're planned to be fully reopened in September.
Yeah. And I know people are like, we're all creatures of habit, right? So I might want to, like even with exercise, like say I like to do, water aerobics. I go to the same class Thursday at 2 o'clock. That's fine. The teacher, my friend, great. But wouldn't it be great if I did the Thursday class in a Zumba aqua? Something like that, right? It's a different experience. I'm going to benefit from it. But yeah, everything. Any type of cognition, stimulation, new learning is really where we want to be at.
is the research showing, in my world, I tend to be concerned by our older black residents, women. I don't know the data on who suffers the most by group. Do you have that?
Yes, women are more susceptible. That's why the risk factor, if you're a woman, you kind of go up.
More susceptible
To dementia.
to dementia.
Yes, yes. Yeah, women are, and African Americans and Hispanic people are a little more susceptible to dementia as well. Yes.
And yet we struggle to get the word to those groups.
Yes, Joe, I'm so glad you said that because it reminds me. Yes, here's another thing too. All right. Our studies, the HBI, that I left that for you, just to know about it, okay, just so you're aware of it. It is a multicultural study. It's going on for 5 years. And Joel brings up an excellent point, because many studies, in whatever they're on, they just tend to be Caucasian people. For whatever the reasons are, that's how it is. But things are changing. Most universities, they're doing this, they're trying to do the same thing, right? I mean, there's research centers that are just kind of independent, and I don't really know what they do. I'm sure good things are happening, but I can only speak from a university perspective, a top-tier university. It is all about getting everyone in the study, because the research findings can reveal that, you know? So if it's just one demographic, or if it's 80% Caucasian and 20% is everybody else, it's not really a good representation. So, you know, it's harder to recruit people sometimes because, you know, it's an unknown, they don't know, and everyone's going to be a little hesitant of something they don't know about, you know? Or maybe they think, I'm just one person, and, you know, I can't really help. Well, you can, right? Everybody's input makes a difference. And again, this is longitudinal, it's observational. When you go, I'm just speaking universally, right, to a researcher, there's no expectations, there's no pass or fail. It's just how you are, they get all the information, it's de-identified, right? You are a number, you are separate, and all that information is going in. And then at the end of the study, it might be a 1 year, 2 year, 5 year, and then all that research is being evaluated, right? The findings, right? The conclusions, right? Implications, all that's happening, right? So, and also you have to think too, it's like you're helping your children, the next generation, right? I'm helping everybody, right? Even though all my information is just about me, I'm helping everybody, right? I'm contributing to everything. Did you have a question?
Well, I do. So this page that's essentially an invitation to join the study as a, you know, as a what would you say?
A participant?
Participant, okay. Now here's the thing, I'm a visitor from Virginia. I might only be living in Florida for the next 10 months or so. Is it, I mean, does that disqualify me in some way? Because I couldn't be able to necessarily follow up for the entire 5 years or something?
Well, since you brought it up, I have enough information to report, but since you brought it up, I will explain that. Ideally, people that are in a research study, this one particular, is 5 years. Sometimes things happen, right? But if someone knows that they can't, like I'm moving to, you know, Australia and I don't want to ever fly an airplane, then no. But ideally, but then even with research, sometimes things happen, right? You're in it, but you move, or for whatever reason, you withdraw. People can withdraw. I mean, you sign, you know, it's a big process. It is asking a lot for people to do. There's screenings even before you qualify. Then you come back, there's assessments, there's questionnaires. It's a lot. But the reward, in my opinion, exceeds the work. Because every year, you are going to get a very, very thorough assessment of yourself. You're giving back to society, right? You're helping future science. And as we all know, we're aging, right? Thank goodness, we're aging, we want that quality of life. So we're contributing to people living better in their older years, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
And then, yeah.
So we see a lot of fragile people every Saturday. Not necessarily all elderly, but fragile. Not necessarily practicing enough good health habits because of the challenges of life.
Yes.
We're not necessarily seeing them as having memory challenges or whatever it might be, but it's clear they're challenged in many ways. Is there a book, a tool, a flyer, a something that we would have access to that might stimulate a person to self-ask the question? We don't have anything like that.
So the people, what would they say that last part again? They would be,
So that if we give a person a flyer on how to get help on their mortgage, or
I
whatever it
see.
might be, is there a puzzle book, is there something
yes.
that if you mess this up, go get help, not that dramatically.
Right. It would be like a self-assessment.
A first step kind of a thing.
There are some tools like that, yes, and I can look into that for you.
That would be great.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great question. And you bring up a really good point, Joel, because a lot of times, it kind of gets back to that self-family community, right? Many people, right, there is so much going on, right? They're worried about rent and children, and even if they know, it's like the last thing on their mind is to make time to go check that out, right? Or they're just still in those very, preliminary things, just trying to sort out and stabilize. So again, it's really tough because sometimes those people are susceptible to dementia because they have all that, right? They're not, maybe they're not continuing their education, like just taking a class at the Y. Those, but not formal education, but just, lifelong learning in the community. They're not able to do that, right? The nutrition, they're not available, those stores are too far away or it's too pricey. So, yes, so they're already kind of aging the best they can, but those 40 points, it's really hard to get there. And then, even if they see something, they maybe are like, I've got to take care of this person, or this or that, whatever. So it's hard. It's hard to reach everybody, especially the ones that really, really need it. But that's what I just want to jump in everybody's head. Like, if you know somebody, a family member, whatever, just keep encouraging, right? There's nothing wrong with still encouraging people, still telling people again the right thing to do, because it's, you hear it maybe one more time, just one little change, right? One little change, even if it's just like your lunch, right? Everything else, dinner has to be quick and this and that, but maybe the lunch, I can look up that Mind Act and just make sure my food is according to that, right? Or something, like your idea about if crossword puzzles or some kind of little book that they have, right? It's not, maybe they're doing it at home, it's not socially, but it's a new learning, it's a new challenge. So any little step is better than, it's not gonna matter. That mindset, that's not gonna be good for any of us.
I think it goes back to the slide that you shared of all that had the green space on it, that had all of the prevention, or at least the wellness things you could do, the strategies, and yeah, that one.
This one, yeah.
And to look at those, for us as a community, as an organization, as a church community, all of the things that we are independently and together, and say, these are things we can do, offerings we can have, things we can partner to do, and in the process, explain to people that this is part of prevention for a healthy person holistically.
Yes.
Because like we've all said, and we have conversations about this all the time, if I'm struggling to pay my mortgage, there are all kinds of physical, mental, emotional, spiritual effects that has on me. There are consequences to that. outside of the fact that I might get kicked out of my dwelling place if I can't pay my mortgage. But there's ripple and residual effects from that. So I look at that and say, my gosh, what can we do, or what can we make known that's going on in the community that people can participate in, and say, oh, by the way, in case you didn't know, and I suspect a lot of people do, it's just getting out there and actually doing it. You know, this is healthy living.
Right, yeah, it's a great point. And also, think of it too, it's an opportunity for multi-generational too, right? Because it is the lifespan, and many of these things, right, it's encouragement too. Like for example, a young child and, a grandparent or just an older adult in their family, connecting on some level, for creativity. I mean, I get to see at the beach, right, and building sandcastles or something. But again, or just taking, a weekly walk outside, together. Because again, most people emphasize dementia, well, I'll worry about that when I'm 70. But we talked about that today, right? It's the lifespan. It's always impacting what's going to happen as we get older. Yeah. So it's a really good point, Kurt. Yeah.
I'm surprised that pets is not on there.
Oh, yeah. You're right. That's a good one too. I don't think there's any research on that. Yeah, that's a good. Yeah. Well, I'm sure. And pets. This is very random, but pets can get dementia. Yeah. Yeah. There's things on here that, right. It's not everything, but these are just kind of highlighted ones. But yeah, pets are. Oh gosh, they're. Yeah.
Excuse me, but I believe there's been 2 studies that people that own pets actually live longer.
There probably is. Yeah. That love,
Because of the
support,
companionship.
Yeah.
We know that elderly, when they lose their pet, decline quickly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
May I say something else too? With the stress that's going on in the world today, all the things that you've gone through, all the stress that people are under, has to affect a lot of that stuff.
It does. When if someone goes through, like I said, I was talking like highlights of the research, but that's a great example. If someone was in a very comprehensive assessment, there's a lot of questions about stress. Yes, they spend a lot of time on that. So think of it as it's like everything's being, for lack of a better word, schooled, right? Not only exercise, diet. How much time you spend in research, but there's a lot of it too about stress level. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And it's also affecting the young children, teenagers, as we all know.
Yes, the world is much harder than it was 20 years ago on young population. Yeah, very unfortunate. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes.
Can I ask you a very personal question? I think you touched on it, but when I was growing up, I came from a small family, mother, father, and a younger sister and myself. Now, we lived originally in New York City, we moved to a suburb. And at that time, my father's mother, my grandmother, she was of an advanced age, and she developed what was then called senility. And it was very severe. And for the last 10 to 12 years of her life, it was very, very severe, to the extent that it drove everybody else crazy. Okay? Not initially, we put up with it but then my mother and father like almost separated over it, which made me angry because I could see what it was doing. Okay, so here's the question. I think you touched on it, or I was always fearful, frankly. I said, is senility, in a sense, is the tendency to develop senility, is that inherited, is it genetic? Because I heard, yes, if someone in your family has senility, you're more likely to develop it, or it skips a generation. I don't pretend to know any of this. But it was a concern for me. Is there anything about that at all?
Well, I don't know specifically about that diagnosis. I don't know, but I'm assuming it's going to be in the realm of dementia. It's kind of defined. So I don't really know, and I don't want to just say anything to say something. But it's just like also with like dementia, someone's parents had Alzheimer's disease. Yes, they could get it, but it doesn't. It still doesn't mean it's going to happen.
Right.
But usually people that have in their family, it's very black and white. They're usually very on guard, and they're like really doing everything as best they can within reason, or they're scared and don't want to know.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, and then sometimes too, like years ago, I don't think the diagnosis was as accurate as it has been in the past 20 years.
No, obviously, that's a very, very...
Yeah, they would just kind of cage everybody in, and that was it. And I mean, there's no cure, there's no real treatment. It's just more, coping with, the symptoms and things like that. But even back then, years ago, they didn't even have what they have now.
Sure.
And drug trials are really, really important. We'll be starting to do those, but we're providing prevention. But even some of the drug sites, there's been some new information to help people that are living with dementia, and I think it'll continue to get better because it impacts a lot. And everyone that and the other thing too, I don't want to leave on a bad note, but also I didn't get into it on the slides, but if you have diabetes or hypertension, high cholesterol, it does put you at higher risk. It does. Especially if it's not managed. But if it's managed well, it still is a little bit increased. So again, like a lot of health, chronic diseases, that they can kind of develop into another one, right? So just to be aware of that as well. Yeah. But we have 40% power. I want to make sure I end on something positive. 40%, right? So I'm just curious, of all these things, you don't have to answer, just in your head though, let's do this. In your head right now, decide on something you're not doing. Like we can all do it. One, maybe two, I don't do that. And in your mind, it would be great, your takeaway tonight, you look at one of those things and think, you know what? I'm going to do one little new thing in that. Okay? So you can tell me if you want, but you don't have to. But all those things, there's a lot up there. There's 8 different things. Some of them kind of blended together. But that's what I would recommend. Just something new, baby step. Yes?
I'm not sure. What did you mean by mindfulness?
Oh, mindfulness. This is something that I literally put green space and mindfulness because there is research that's directly correlated to healthy brain aging if you include these. And again, you can go back, many, many years in your lifespan. But mindfulness it's not yoga and it's not like structured meditation. You have to do this. It's really just kind of decluttering the mind. There's a lot of information on this online. And I would just suggest if you're doing a search, just find people that have been doing it a while, look at their credentials. But it's really just, sitting quietly or you can lay down and just releasing everything from your mind, decluttering your mind and just being at ease and self-acceptance. To me, I've done it a few times in different practices, in different groups. To me, it's like a reset. I just feel like it's a reset. Okay, so any other questions? Or okay? Okay. All right, well, thank you. If you have any questions, you can just call the center, ask for me. I'd be happy to talk to you. Or if you, anything in the community, we want to get the word out about healthy brain aging. So don't hesitate to contact me. Thank you.